We get railed by the masters at Omega. It's Crocs and Shocks for a Casio collab. Al Capone's untouchable watch up for auction, plus all the latest news, including something from Bamford and Gerard Perigo. Welcome to Scottish Watches podcast. But Dave, let's hit the road running. Let's actually talk about potentially Bonnie Blue's favourite watch.
Omega have brought back the Railmaster. I have to say they've brought it back not for the first time or even the second time, but for possibly the third or fourth time.
Now, when you say Railmaster, is that the title of a video you might find in one of those tube sites?
One of those internet sites that you shouldn't be looking at.
One of those hubs of community where people post interesting content.
Those of the kind of ornithological nature, looking at birds, that kind of thing.
That kind of thing, hamsters, or hamsters that have passed away.
But anyway, no, this is the Omega Railmaster, one of their trilogy of true tool watches if you look back far enough historically, but they have brought out two new variants of it. We've got one in a grey gradient dial, which personally I quite like, and they've brought one out in a beige colour. And I always get very suspicious when I hear anything called beige, or to put it in Scots, keich.
I remember Billy Connolly talking about beige jobbies.
Beige jobbies, or keich, indeed, yes. Well, what have we got here? Well, we have got kind of quite a quiet reintroduction, but it does seem that Omega's been doing that a little bit in the last year or so. They tend to be whacking a watch onto an ambassador's wrist, sending them out into the wild and hoping that somebody picks up on it, takes some pictures and maybe suggests that it's been a leak or some kind of inadvertent outing of the watch. But it definitely seems to be their OP at the moment, shall we say. It definitely started off with that guy that used to play James Bond, showing off quite a lot of things. And then there are a few other people doing the same, so it seems to definitely be on the agenda for them, and I think a few other brands are doing it. But we've got two versions here, both as I mentioned with gradient dials on them, and one in a great colour in my opinion and one in a terrible colour. But anyway, we can look back to 1957, and this was part of the brand's, I guess, professional line, or what became known as the Broad Arrow trilogy. Each of the watches within this trilogy was pretty specific in terms of what it was for. You of course had the Speedmaster, which was for motorsports, you had the Seamaster for diving, and the Railmaster, well, I guess the clue's in the name, railway staff, but also engineers and scientists that were working, as they put it. Now, the Railmaster did stand out for its kind of technical utility. It was reasonably anti-magnetic back in the day. A lot of watches back in the 50s were around the 60 gauge mark, but the Railmaster could handle around 1,000. Compared to what a lot of watches are today, not a huge amount, but definitely enough for its professional usage back there in the late 1950s. The original kind of range was, I guess, pretty niche, a little bit like that Rolex model that folk keep hoping is going to come back, but never probably will. And it did end up getting discontinued in the 60s. It was out of the range for, I believe, at least a couple of decades, but it came back round about 2003, part of the Aquaterra range, a few different sizes, and then I remember them doing an utterly ridiculous 49mm version, which had a pocket watch movement, which was the Omega 2201. Then again, 2012, all of them were discontinued and off they went again for a little holiday. It wasn't until 2017 when it came back again, and then of course what they brought back was that 1957 trilogy re-edition for the 60th anniversary. They did a limited edition box set, and they had a couple of non-limited edition models in there. And then in 2018 there was the denim dial model that came out, one that some folk loved it, some folk absolutely hated it. It didn't kind of hang around for too long either. And then the newest one, which we've got out here, is in 38mm. We've got a lug to lug of 45, 12.36mm thick, and depending on what dial you get, depends how it fits to your wrist. If you go for the grey dial, you get a stainless steel bracelet. If you go for that beige dial, you get a leather strap. 19mm at the lug width down to 17mm, and if you have got the bracelet, you've got a button-operated butterfly clasp with a micro-adjust system. Ricky, can you guess how many millimetres of adjustment they're giving you? They're being very generous, I say in jest.
No idea.
2mm, which is probably just as well not to have any adjustment at all. But anyway, moving on. The dials are essentially the same in effect, but of course the grey one, you've got this matte effect, and you've got the gradient that goes from kind of quite grey in the centre out to what I would suggest is pretty much verging on black at the edges. The beige brown one though is again a matte gradient dial, but it goes from quite keichy in the middle out to dark brown at the edges. And no, we're not looking at samples that have been submitted to your doctor. The other big difference actually is that one of them is a small seconds and one of them is a centre seconds. The grey one being centre seconds and the beige one being a small seconds. You've also got the thing that a lot of folk will not like on the beige one, faux patina colour. Again, something that tends to drive a bit of derision among some of the collectors out there. Of course, 150 metres of water resistance, it is technically in the Seamaster family. You've got the coaxial chronometer caliber in there. Of course, two slight variations, 8804 or 8806, depending on whether you're small seconds or central seconds. METAS certified, slightly different power reserve, strangely, 60 hours or 55 hours. And price point wise, €6,100 if you're in the beige dial with the strap, or €6,300 on the grey dial. Grey one, pretty cool looking. Beige one, nope, hard pass on that one. Ricky, probably not your vibe, these watches, I'm going to guess.
That's a no from me, dog. And I'm pretty sure I got to see these clasps getting made recently when I was somewhere. But anyway, that's a story for another time. It'll never be broadcast ever on this show, so don't worry. The watches are a faithful recreation of what's come before, but along with various other watches from different brands like the IWC Ingenieur, I didn't notice that it disappeared from the lineup. And I suppose it's unlike cars where people notice when suddenly the Mondeo disappears, the Focus disappears, and there's a big crazy get-together of minds when the new Capri comes out. I'm talking about Ford at the moment because I was reading about Ford earlier on. That to me is when something comes back and it is nothing at all compared to what we had in the past. And I'm wearing a watch today from a wrist check. I've also got the original from the past, and they share a lot of DNA, even though there is probably 40 years of a gap between. So if you like the look of this one, and maybe you don't have the pennies for the Railmaster, you're not quite sold on it because it is expensive compared to other models out there. It has got a Longines look about it, definitely has. And if you like this, cool, go and get it. If you don't like it, cool, move on to something else. But maybe if you're looking to save your pennies, look elsewhere within the Swatch group, or maybe look at the older models, maybe ones from a few years back that you'll get for an absolute steal on eBay, Chrono24, those kinds of places, because there's not much of a difference when it comes to the look of it in my eyes.
You say faithful reinterpretation. I think there's also a little bit of a twist on that. Obviously, the twisted lug, that's something that wasn't really in the originals either.
What I mean by a faithful reproduction or representation is it's very, very similar to what came before, as in 5 years ago, 7 years ago, or 10 years ago, plus the original. It's not like the new Ford Capri bears no resemblance to what Bodie and Doyle used to kick around in the professionals.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. And actually, yeah, talking about that Capri, I loved the original Capri. It was definitely of its time. Don't know whether it would be particularly practical to do a new version of it, I have to say, but the new one, it's an ugly ass car. It's not a good looking car in my opinion at all.
I remember being a little kiddie winkle that there was a guy that somehow managed in the UK, this sounds like a story I've told before, but I'll tell again. Guy in the UK, just round the corner from where I used to stay, managed to pick up a deregistration, brand new, beautiful solid red Ford Capri 1.6 laser, and he managed to get it a few days before the registration changed over, and that kind of blew my mind as a kid. That's a story that no one will give a f*** about.
Yes, you're probably correct on that, but anyway, yeah, I remember those cars. My next door neighbour when I was growing up had one as well, and I used to covet looking at it. It was such a cool car. Anyway, back to the reality. We've got an email. We've not done an email for a long time.
All right then, you can take it away and read it then.
It says, thank you for the catch-up podcast with Martin Walport this week. I've been tempted to contact you to ask for a catch-up with him after being a long-time listener to your podcast and weekly reader of your website. It's kept me entertained during lockdown and beyond. I've been a customer of his in the past, and he has been great at help rejuvenating the watches I've sent him. Just like the other podcasts you have made with him, this one did not disappoint. Keep up the good work, and once again, many thanks for this and the other podcasts. I also enjoy the ones with Barbara Palumbo. She's the real deal, and thank you from our fans for championing Scottish watches to what it has become. And that's from long-term listener, Brian.
It turns out Martin is a bit of a stealth stunning guest. We've had guests in the past that they come on, and then just shortly afterwards we get a lot of emails and messages through different channels, definitely not on Instagram, through DMs, you know what I'm talking about. But this time around when Martin was on the show, and it wasn't a big presentation, he wasn't announcing anything, well, apart from closing his shop on a Monday, which has increased his revenue. That's a weird one, but well done, Martin, you know. Work smart, not hard. The actual amount, the sheer velocity and volume of emails, WhatsApp messages, and people getting in touch, people speaking to us in real life at different places. They love when he comes on. And as he likes to say, he's 69-ish years old, almost approaching 7 decades on the planet, and he doesn't sound like it, he doesn't look like it, he doesn't act like it, and he's got this massive fascination with watches, clocks, barometers, anything with mechanical movements inside, although he deals with quartz and tuning forks as well. It is just brilliant to see him, not just on the show, but at events, at Red Bar events, at the Glasgow Watch Show, at Porters in Glasgow when they've got an evening of such and such, and he always walks around with a loop attached to his necklace. No matter where he is, what he's doing, if someone's got a watch that he wants to have a look at, he can get up close and personal with it. And we should probably bring him onto the show more often than once every couple of years, because he has got great tales to tell. Watches that have come in. He actually grabbed me and Dave at the dinner that we had the night before the Glasgow Watch Show to say, guys, I've got a story about Rolex. So we're going to find out more about that and we'll bring it to you. We might get him just to send a voice note explaining more about it. But something we're going to explain more about is a collaboration between Crocs and GShock. And my missus seems to love Crocs for some reason. And she loves GShocks, and I can allow that. But even at our wedding, she had a pair of Crocs, and there was some kind of synergy there with Rich from Studio Underdog, because apparently at his wedding, he did something similar. And every day, almost, maybe that's an exaggeration, but we'll go with it anyway, every day there's a delivery at the house of new Crocs in different colourways. Sometimes she tries to modify them and doesn't quite succeed and then has to order a replacement pair. But anyway, less said about that the better. Dave, you can talk more about what's going on here.
Yes, what is going on here indeed. Crocs, the oft derided footwear that people either, as in the case of your good lady, seem to love, or people think they're absolutely atrocious.
I'll jump in because I remembered something. I was watching a movie. Dave's going to hate me in this episode. I was watching a movie, I've had caffeine, called Idiocracy, I believe. It's from the guy that created Beavis and Butthead and Office Space. He seems to create things that everybody think is and then become cult classics. And in this movie, as he was setting things up, he was trying to show that in the future, from the standpoint of when it was based, everyone would become a moron. Everyone would become addicted to easy this, easy that. No one would think for themselves. Sounds a little bit like at the moment with mobile phones, Instagram, TikTok and AI, but I digress. And he said that he was going to make people wear Crocs in the movie because it was such a stupid idea. Who would actually wear these kinds of things? And then fast forward a couple of years, people actually do.
Yes, Cornholio, that's what you are. Indeed. Anyway, moving along, people either love them, like your good lady, or they detest them.
Detest them? Is that where you snip snip?
Not quite, but anyway, yeah. Well, that's what she does to them when she's trying to modify them and makes a mess of it. Very painful. Anyway, moving along, what do we have? Yes, Casio, or more specifically G-Shock, have teamed up with Crocs. Probably a slightly unusual team up, not something that you would expect from them, because most of the time when G-Shock do collabs, it tends to be with unheard of, super cool people. Kind of, maybe they're into their rap music, maybe they're into their graffiti, maybe they're into kind of weird and wonderful underground scene type areas, but Crocs is very much mainstream. So this is a pair of Crocs, wait for it, that you can mount your Casio G-Shock onto. Not something that I can ever see myself doing, but anyway, we'll go with it. We've got a pair of glow-in-the-dark Crocs Echo Waves. Now, apparently what Echo Wave means, it's their streetwear inspired takes on the classic Croc formula. Still not getting it, to be honest.
But you're a guy that loves footwear and crazy colours and crazy materials, and you're always posting not just wrist shots but sneaker shots. So do Crocs not appeal to you? Is that not some kind of cross-contamination that you're involved in?
No, Crocs are a prime example of they've taken that too far. That's exactly what Crocs are. They're just not all about them. Also not all about these kind of weird and wonderful foam type shoes that people wear that are, I guess, Croc-esque.
Oh, like Yeezys, where they've taken a shoe, a sneaker, and pumped it full of self-expanding foam.
Yeah, that kind of vibe. Not into that in any way, shape or form. Anyway, back to the story. So yes, these are meant to more closely resemble a traditional pair of sneakers. So what do we have? We have a unique GA2100 Casio. Wonder where that name came from, Ricky. Everyone seems to use it. Pretty sure there's a story behind that name. Anyway, moving on. Yes, like the shoes, the dial of the Casio glows in the dark. You've got the Crocs logo at 12 o'clock and it's got a marble pattern on the strap that is very resembling the shoe lining, and the strap also has a quick release, which means you can pop that off. There's a special little rivet that attaches this to the side of the shoes. 27th of May 25 is when these beauties and wonders will be made available for people to buy at the princely sum of $200 US, and I believe that is for the watch and the shoes, which all in all seems to be not too bad. I don't think the watch is going to survive too long being attached to a pair of shoes, but these are more likely to probably end up on someone's shelf rather than actually being worn or being traded as they become valuable assets. Well, I say valuable assets, they'll probably trade for about $20 more than you paid for them. Ricky, can't see you wearing these. Can definitely see someone that's very close to you wearing these though.
Oh, they're the bane of my life. See the Crocs with the holes that you can put the little jewels and the little accessories and charms, I think they're called. I find them everywhere. Oh my god. No, never mind, let's move on because it's causing me anguish.
Do you ever find them embedded in your feet, kind of a la children with Lego?
Yeah, it's a good stepping stone towards having kids, having a wife. So yeah, I get what you mean, Dave. And obviously you've played this game a couple of times yourself. Yeah, not for me, dog, but I'm pretty sure that somebody will be ordering these things at some point. They just thought somebody's made it out of, I don't know, shaving foam and they've carved away. Never mind, move on. What's next?
Move on. Well, something altogether more serious. Al Capone, his Patek Philippe, is coming up for auction. Not for the first time, but it is going to pop up. And I believe that they are valuing it higher than it was hired at a previous auction, but it's likely to get less, which doesn't really make much sense.
Funnily enough, I was doing a little bit of research on The Untouchables, as in the movie with Sean Connery and Kevin Costner, a great movie. And this all came about because I was watching lots of things to do with Sean Connery and Rolex watches and blah, blah, blah. And you know how the algorithm on YouTube just kind of takes you on a bit of a ride? Well, I went down that rabbit hole, learned all about the Untouchables, how this happened, that happened, how it was kind of based on this truthful story, but then they meddled around with it. And I'm actually trying to find it on Blu-ray because none of the streaming services seem to have the bloody thing. But anyway, tell us more about Al Capone's watch and then try and explain to me what the fascination is with people that have done dastardly deeds and other folks in the future wanting to have things that these people had. Because it doesn't really make sense to me why somebody would want a murderer's or a robber's or a whatever's thing, because surely those are bad people.
Well, yes, we'll get onto that in a second, but what watch are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a platinum and diamond pocket watch that seems to be drawing some attention. It's due to come up for auction at Sotheby's New York auction, which is taking place in the near future. This is a watch that was owned in the 1920s, as we mentioned, by Al Capone, and is going to be one of the highlights, albeit not one of the watches that's expected to get the highest price, but of course it's the one that's going to get all the headlines. And this is their important watches auction. Now, the case back has been decorated with the mobster's monogram in 90 diamonds. I wonder how much blood diamonds were involved in those. Quite a lot, I feel. But it was previously sold back in 2021 by Withersall for $229,900 US. Sotheby's are giving it a slightly higher pre-estimate than was given by that initial auction. It was only, I believe, somewhere in the 20 to 30,000 because at the point in time it wasn't working, and I believe it was also missing one of the hands. But they are giving it a pre-sale estimate of 80 to 160,000 US. Who knows, of course, what it will go for. There are also a few other interesting things coming up. 6 Patek Philippe minute repeaters are coming up. Some of these are the only known examples of the double-signed pink gold series, which is referenced 2499, that were sold by Gobbi Milan. What remains to be seen, of course, is what effect various things like tariffs are going to have, and it does seem to be that they're trying to source more and more watches that are already in the United States, because of course if they're coming in from overseas they may well be subject to that naughty little tariff that's coming in. The auction, when does it take place? Well, it takes place on June the 10th, so let's see what happens to that. To answer your other question, I have no idea. I kind of get why people might want, I don't know, a watch or a keepsake or a piece of equipment or a piece of clothing used by someone that did something, I don't know, meaningful, whether that's, you know, the first guy on the moon, or whether that's someone that, I don't know, cured some terrible disease or something, you know, meaningful to humanity. But there has always been a fascination, especially with those 1920s gangsters who were not exactly, you know, how shall we put it politely, upstanding members of society. And there's been a few people come after that definitely have been berated. I wonder if in 100 years certain characters from the, let's say, the 40s, 50s and 60s, just to give it a wider berth than it could be, might get celebrated in the same way. I don't think so, but you never know.
It's strange. We sometimes discuss offline about mobile phones and apps listening to you when they're turned off, and I was just scrolling there looking for some information and I found this.
Cornholio.
Yeah, very strange that Dave mentioned something and it kinda pops up in my phone. Isn't that a little bit odd? The great Cornholio requiring TP for his bunghole. The reason I was looking into more stuff to do with Untouchables is the new movie Mission Impossible is coming out. Well, the new movie, the latest version of it. And it's Brian De Palma that did Untouchables. He also did the first Mission Impossible. So I actually looked out that movie and watched it. And it is glorious. 1996 it came out, and there's a whole load of behind the scenes stuff on the internet, plus on the Blu-ray itself. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole last night and watched the first one. Started watching the second one today. Not the same director. John Woo is the guy at the helm of the second one, and personally, I think it's dog shit. But anyway, we should probably move on and talk about watches.
Well, we better do that thing that gets us into trouble every week without fail from Miziel, the show note maestro. Wrist checks, and I always get to come second, except when I don't. So Ricky, you're going first. What be you wearing on the wrist? You've already muted to it earlier that you have an old and a new one, but what are you wearing today?
Well, I did kind of mention earlier on, I'm wearing something that I've got the original version of, and people that listen to the show, watches on YouTube for a while, probably know I'm wearing my Raketa. And it's a watch that I got a number of years ago before the pandemic, 2019, and it's called the Copernicus, but it's based on the previous edition that came out. I have no idea when, but the original one I have is from around about 1980 to 1982. This new one is just upgraded in all ways. The first thing to say about it is it has got the world's greatest anti-reflective coating or coatings, because in the studio here it is quite dicey trying to get a good wrist shot, even though we have the overhead camera. But looking at this, it's almost as if there is absolutely no sapphire on the front of it. You can see a tiny hint of a reflection, but outside, even though it has got a massive bulbous front end, you can't see it at all. You see completely through it. And the party piece of the Copernicus is the fact that the watch itself doesn't tell the time with hands. It doesn't tell the time with discs, as in the usual way you would expect. It's actually got a ring and a disc to emulate different planets, different rings around those planets. And the coloration, the striation, the way they've done a brushing effect on the hour disc to give it a very reminiscent look of the original. And if you're watching on YouTube, I am actually going to pull out the original and do a bit of a side-by-side comparison between the two. So there is my original from the early 80s, and there is the newer, larger, more up-to-date, more modern technology. The new one has actually got an automatic movement inside, not manual wind like the old one here. It's a little bit chunkier, but it keeps the same styling, the same way of telling the time with the hand. Taking the new one off the wrist quickly and showing you the back, because it's got a couple of other little features that aren't usually spoken about. Sometimes watches have got clear casebacks, exhibition casebacks, so you can look through, you can see what's going on. With this one, it's got a little porthole down at the bottom, so you can see what's going on. If the rotor gets out of the way, you can see the movement, you can see the escape wheel, you can see what's going on there with the balance, everything down there. But then the actual oscillating weight, which is a cutout, looks more like an axe shape. When that rolls into view, you can see that it's got some really good engine turning on it. A little bit different decoration than you'd usually find from most watches, and being Russian, they like to do things differently. We've had the guy at the helm of the brand on the show a number of times in the past. Obviously, we talk about Chaikin, we talk about different watchmakers from across the globe, and just because what's going on, perhaps, in head office at the government, that doesn't really reflect what the watchmakers and the members of the public are up to, what they're into, and what they're trying to achieve. Obviously, the story with Raketa is as long as the day, and it goes way, way, way back to all kinds of stuff to do with space technology and the Big Zero. Gorbachev was involved in that story. Miziel will link in the show notes to previous episodes if you want to learn the history all about Raketa and how a guy from outside Russia came in and actually stopped the business going out of business. Dave, Dave is dying in the background. Dave, I've done my wrist check. And you want to comment on this before we get to yours?
Raketa, a brand that have always done some interesting things. They're always a brand that are out there trying to do things a little bit differently, whether it be, of course, that Big Zero or watches like this. Yeah, a brand that are interesting, worth watching, and if you have a look at their catalogue, have always likely to have something that will tweak your interest. Movements in these are also movements that are made in-house. They do their own thing because obviously with being a brand that were behind the Iron Curtain for so many decades, they had to do it their own way if they wanted to remain in business, and that they very much did. And as Ricky mentioned, David took the helm a few years ago now and has very much got them up and running. They've got their watchmaking school and they've done a lot of modernisation, although they still have a lot of those original machines that they've kept up and running over the years.
And when Dave mentions old machines, don't think that that's a problem, because these things are modern inside. They run, they are accurate, and even the guys at Moser use machines that are hundreds of years old. The guys at GLC do the same. If it works, why fix it? And the guys at Roketa are not fixing a lot because a lot of it does work. But Dave, time to tell us what you've got on the wrist today.
So what am I wearing? Well, I'm wearing something that kind of leads into a few things we've been talking about. We've been talking about grey Fume dials with that Omega at the top of the show, and we are going to be talking about something that Girard Perregaux are up to with our friend George Bamford. But I am wearing my Absolute. So this is the Laureato Absolute, a titanium wonder, a 300-meter diver. This is a watch that I've had for a few years now. It has an amazingly comfortable strap. Only Rolex do something similar. This is a kind of rubber strap with some fabric, but it also has a layer of titanium inside, which gives it some structure and form to it. Very useful little clasp here. It has got the micro adjust. You can see the little adjustment button here, which can be operated by a single button on the open and close closure with a carbon liner with some titanium in there as well. You may have seen this on a brand, a Swiss brand that is based in and out of Biel. They also have a business that does very cool things with bracelets and straps. This is a watch that I do not wear often enough, but every time I wear it, I absolutely love it. And it's light, although it's a bit of a chunky beast, but because it's in grade 5 titanium, very wearable indeed. And I originally wanted the blue Fume dial, but for some reason ended up going for the grey Fume dial. And this is one watch that I have definitely loved owning. You can also see that little sandwich style dial there. Maybe if I just move it in the light, you can catch the appliques, which have got the lower dial that just shines through slightly there as well. So that is what I have been wearing.
Apologies if anyone is hearing in the background of Dave's audio. I don't know, it's a bad rendition of Star Wars on a flute. But anyway, we're not going to talk about Dave and his Star Wars intricacies. We're going to talk about what we've been up to. I have said what I've been up to. I have been busy. There's been lots of stuff happening since the Glasgow Watch Show. Had a catch up with the dial artist at the show and then afterwards, because he's got so many things going on with brands that we speak to that it would be stupid not to speak to him. So there's an episode coming soon that you'll love because he goes in intricate detail about what it's like to collab with brands, how these conversations come to be, the positives, the negatives, the good things and the pitfalls. Another thing that's happening very soon is Formex are coming across to Scotland. Raf and the crew are coming, not to the Glasgow Watch Show because that's in the past. They're coming to James Port & Son for their own event. They're having an evening there with the full staff. Simon will be in attendance. I'll be coming down. I don't know if Dave's even in the country. Hopefully he is and he can come too. But Raf is going to be showcasing the latest releases, plus the new ceramic technologies, those clasps that Dave talked about that, end up in other watches and other brands. But that is happening in the next couple of days, and it'll be good to see him back in Scotland because he's not been here since my wedding. Other things I've been up to, catching up on movies. Not so much new things because they all seem to be terrible these days. All the stuff on Netflix, not great whatsoever. But I am going to be heading to the cinema. I'm going to check out the new Mission Impossible because it's kind of the thing you do. We've obviously got F1 coming next month, so this will be a good one with Tom Cruise and obviously the crew that was behind the latest Top Gun movie a couple of years ago, Maverick. And then tomorrow, as we're recording at the weekend, because Dave is on his travels, tomorrow I'm heading to a Porsche event. I'm going to see lots of cool classics all the way through to modern day. And I think that's probably about it. So Dave, apart from snottering all the way through my speaking there, putting me off, taking me off my stride, how is the hay fever? What are you going to do about it?
Yes, the hay fever is particularly virulent this year, I have to say. I have got prescription drugs for it and it's doing absolutely nothing for it, which is not great. This is the worst I have had hay fever in many a decade. But hey, there's not a lot I can do about it other than sniff my way through these episodes. Outside that though, what have I been up to? Well, I was away for a few days trying to recuperate after a lot of travelling, but then of course I come back and I'm straight back into travelling, so that will be out the window, so to speak, within the next day or two. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend that event at Porter's. I was invited along with yourself, but I believe it is the day before I come back from Switzerland, so that's not going to work out too well for me, unfortunately, but I know that that will be an amazing event. I think that brand has really taken off, so to speak, from the minute it was launched in the Porter's & Sons. So yes, great to see Raf over so soon after setting that brand up to get more involved with the customer supporter. Anyway, moving along, what else have I been up to? Well, I I forgot that one of the little Star Wars series that I did watch the first series of, the version or series 2 is now out, that being Andor, and I've done a bit of a binge on that, and actually it's pretty good. They're doing it, instead of single releases each week, they're doing 3 episodes, and each 3 episodes is 1 year, and it moves on a year for the next 3 episodes. Interesting way of doing things. Pretty good story. Some of those little Star Wars kind of swing outs or kind of offshoots are not great. Some of them are definitely very good. Like, I did enjoy all of the episodes of Mandalorian, and hopefully another one of those is coming up soon. Outside that, no, I've been trying to keep a low profile, keep myself just basically getting, back up and running, so to speak. But of course, let's see how long that lasts.
But something else that's aligning is a collaboration for the multipleth time from George Bamford and the folks at Gerard Perigo, tying in with Dave Rischek. They have done something that is out there. Maybe not out there as in outer space, but this is going back in time. This could be the DeLorean version.
Bamford and Gerard Perigo, this is their third collaboration, and of course, Gerard Perigo being one of the original Swiss maisons. And who's Bamford? Well, he is the British customizer. That's how he started. Maybe being a little bit cheeky around the edges as he began. Maybe, doing things that maybe upset a couple of companies, but has managed to build a huge business and is now very official with many brands out there doing some interesting takes on their classic watches. And he's now decided to transform a 1960s classic. Now, collabs are not a new thing, let's be straight. Gerard Perigo, of course, is ultimately a collab. It was the marriage of Constant Girard and Marie Perigo in 1854, and the acquisition of one of the first fully vertically integrated manufacturers, Boathouse, which was established in 1791. But let's talk about the previous 2 collabs that have been done between Bamford and GP. Back in 2020, we've had the first collab, which was the limited edition all-white Laureato Ghost, using, of course, a white ceramic case, a watch that I know Ricky has a very soft spot for, and if he could ever get his hands on one, would probably be all up for getting his wife annoyed at him spending money on watches when he shouldn't be, because that is an absolute classic little piece, that watch. Then, to follow that up, he created a one-of-a-kind casquette, which was composed of a Ford carbon case and titanium. That was for the 2021 outing of that thing that is no longer the only watch auction, but that got the whole vibe of casquette back, and of course there have been multiple releases of casquette versions from Gerard Perigo since that point in time. But it did also kind of renew the interest in some of these 1970s classic pieces that Gerard Perigo were doing. And now we have the Deep Diver, a watch that dates back to 1957. At the time, it was a sportier alternative to the Gerard Perigo Seahawk line, which was definitely more in the dress end of their range. But what do we have? We've got a barrel-shaped case. You've got a distinctive 14-facet bezel on there with a circular top ring on there. You also had the distinctive hallmark that would resurface later in the Laureato itself. This watch was in the late 60s and early 70s. They also produced a high-frequency version running at 5 Hz, which featured the gyromatic self-winding movement. This one, though, is a limited edition piece. You've got some interesting things going on. A very strong red dial. You've got pops of blue, orange and white on the dial. You've got their in-house GP 03300 caliber, 46 hours of power reserve. Size-wise, 40.3mm by 38 wide by 13.36mm thick. Cushion-shaped case, lightweight, grade 5 titanium now. You've got a date on there. You've got that rotating inner bezel, and it's adjusted via the crown, which is at 2 o'clock. Of course, with it being a Bamford release, expect a bit of interesting additions here. You've got the blue rubber strap, but you also got an additional very vibrant bright orange strap in there as well. Only 350 pieces available via GP's retailers worldwide and also online via Bamford's watch department website. I absolutely love this watch. I think it looks amazing.
Got to hand it to George and the team because this is a fantastic collab. Perhaps not quite as much as the Ghost that was mentioned earlier, because I'm still on the lookout for that. Every time I've seen one, which has not been that often, they have gone for such crazy lofty heights price-wise. I believe more than retail. That I have just backed away because there is a Formex out there just now in ceramic. There's a Maurice Lacroix out there in ceramic, and because it wouldn't be a day-to-day watch, it wouldn't be something I'd be wearing a lot of the time, I just don't want to put my hand in my pocket that deeply at the moment. But this collab is wonderful. It goes way back. It's not just a hint, it's not just a touch of something from the past. It really goes to bat, and it incorporates everything that you would want from a proper limited edition release that harks back to a bygone era, way before George was even born. Fantastic release. You know what? We promised Georgie would come back onto the show, and it has been a while. I mean, it was a limited edition he was on talking about the last time. I think he's due a full episode, just me, George, and Dave. Not an insert, not a segment, the full booner. So let's get in touch with him and his team and see if we can make that happen, because I'm sure he's got a lot of stuff to talk about, having come back from Watches and Wonders, having been at various different shows across the UK. He was supposed to be coming up to Glasgow. Something happened behind the scenes, didn't quite make it. So we can obviously find out what he's been up to and let you guys know all about it. And Dave, what else should we be letting people know all about?
Well, we should be letting them know that if they want to get in contact with us, what they need to do is not send us a DM on Instagram. They should be sending an email to info@scottishwatches.co.uk. If you send us anything on Instagram, we'll just ignore it.
And if you want to email Dave direct, email nympho@scottishwatches.co.uk.
Excellent. Yes, I will
I
be
am
vetting
so
these.
caffeinated today. It's incredible.
You are. And caffeine, inverted commas. Yes, we'll go with that. Anyway, moving along, what else? Well, if you want to get an email read out, send us and talk to us about something interesting. Outside of that, you should be checking out the back catalogue. Lots of interesting episodes, nearly 700, not that far away. We're slowly but surely creeping up. We passed that magical 666 episode. So within the next few months, we will be hitting 700. We should really get our thinking caps on about who we should be getting on for that. Maybe if any of you have any ideas, drop us an email and we can spend a bit of time seeing if we can maybe convince whoever you suggest to come on and get
jiggy with it,
interviewed with ourselves. Professional, maybe not. Yes, of course, check out the website www.scottishwatches.co.uk. Many articles on there. Almost every day something fresh goes up that will be interesting to read, and many writers have broken and cut their teeth, so to speak, writing articles for us before moving on to bigger and better things, or sometimes just disappearing into the ether. Who knows? Of course, there's lots of things to look forward to in the coming months. We have talked about that big show happening in Dubai. That's coming up, Dubai Watch Week. If you're still thinking about it, time is ticking. Check out those flight tickets, check out those hotels. The later you leave it, the more expensive it gets. But all the dates are out there now, and even the registration website is open, so you can register to attend. Remember, it's free to attend. You just need to pay your accommodation and your travel. Outside that, Ricky, what else should people be doing?
That's pretty much it. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, the audio podcast sometimes has a slightly different flavour. There are jokes that work in an audible medium compared to the visual medium, and vice versa. There are things that appear in the video that the audio podcast doesn't have because it's a visual gag. So we recommend you listen on a Monday and a Thursday, and then at the weekend, the news show will be online, thanks to Gav, because he is a great guy when it comes to video editing. He puts in jokes visually that we don't even think of ahead of time. So it is a great collaboration, a melding of minds, shall we say. But also check us out on Instagram @ScottishWatches. The email address is info@scottishwatches.co.uk. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing I would say is, if you like what you hear, leave us a review. If you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whichever platform you're using, definitely drop us a review. Give us 5 stars if that is at all possible. And that is it. So thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.